Hello, so welcome to day 3 of YA ThrillerCon, and this is one of our writing workshops. So I'm so grateful to Christina for giving this great workshop all about how to edit yourself, self-editing. So this is going to be a really useful workshop for all our writers who are watching this. It is interactive as well, so if you're watching on YouTube, you can use the live chat facility to ask Christina a question at any point. And the same if you're watching on Facebook or Twitter, you can also send your questions in via commenting or replying. So yeah, welcome, Christina.
Well, thanks, Madeline, and thanks for inviting me back to YA ThrillerCon 2022. Yeah, it's really exciting to see how this event has grown since the start 3 years ago. So it's great to be a part of it. So welcome, everyone. And as Maddie said, this is a workshop on how to edit yourself, because part of the writing process does involve editing. And we'll talk about it a bit at the end of the workshop, is about getting feedback. But you have to be able to edit yourself and your own work, because relying on other people just doesn't work. It just hasn't really worked for me. And of course, it can be expensive if you hire outside editors, which is another option. But even besides doing that, you need to know certain things to edit yourself, just to judge your own material before you even get it out to beta readers or editors or what have you. So I have a slide presentation. Let's hope this is going to work. I'm going to share my screen. Let me see if I can just get that.
Yeah, we can actually see your slides up on the screen now.
So. Oh, okay. All right. All right. I went to full screen, so we don't have that annoying banner at the top. Although now I don't know how to, hold on. I'm going to pass on to the next screen. Wait a minute. So that's the workshop. Let's see. Let me go. Hold on. I didn't anticipate this. I'm going to get back to. Okay. Okay. So on here, let me go to the screen. I'm not sure how I do the follow on the workshop. There we go. Okay. So about me a little bit. I'm an author. I'm a former journalist, print journalist, and worked for newspapers for many years, and always wanted to write books. So I wrote the YA novel Girl on the Brink, which there's also a giveaway during the con. And it's about a teenage girl who gets involved with the wrong guy, and then she's got to get herself out of it. And it's a bit of a suspense story, and it's based actually or inspired really by something that happened to myself. So there's a lot of truth in that one. And then the noir crime novel Skin of Tattoos, sort of an older YA novel about a gang member trying to go straight, and the gang doesn't let him go so easily. That's set in Los Angeles, where I live. And then I've written 2 novellas, Law of the Jungle, sort of a literary suspense, and The Blood Room, a detective police procedural. And I also edit all types of manuscripts, although it certainly turns out it's more memoirs, I would say, that people are interested in self-publishing, and fiction. So these are some of the things that I've observed through editing other people's manuscripts and my own. So first of all, there are different types of editing, and you have to sort of know what they are. One, the first sort of big picture editing is developmental or content editing. And this is about the big picture, as I said, and it's about the content. And it addresses things like plot and character, the stakes, motivation, setting, pacing, all these types of things. Line editing is sort of your next level down. And that's looking at the style, its word choice, metaphors, changing paragraphs around. Again, it gets a little more nitty gritty. And then the nitty grittier level is copy editing and proofing, sort of the same thing, but copy editing is more grammar, punctuation, spelling, sentence structure. You're reading for clarity, basically. And then you get to your final level, which is proofreading, proofing, crossing your I's, dotting your T's, looking for typos, misplaced commas, all those sort of things, missing full stops, that type of thing. So I recommend you go from big to large, big to small. So because it doesn't make sense if you're painting your toenail, it doesn't make sense to paint the toenail when you're going to amputate the toe. So you have to look at the big picture, which usually involves some cutting, adding, those types of things. So you're looking at whether your story hangs together as a story. You're looking at that character arc, that all-important character arc, who the character is, the main character at the beginning, how they change to the end. The stakes, are your character's stakes clearly stated? And are they high enough for the reader to get emotionally invested? In other words, if the outcome of the plot doesn't propel the character forward enough in their actions that drive the plot. Motivation, which again goes with stakes. Are they? Do they have the proper motivation? Is somebody going to, if I don't do this, somebody's going to die, kind of thing. Doesn't have to be that dramatic, but it has to be fairly clearly stated. Consistency throughout. Do your characters behave consistently with the character you've kind of set up from the beginning? Is it a believable chain? Do they behave in believable ways throughout the book? And you're also looking at plot, your chain of events, your pacing, the flow, subplots. You have to have kind of subplots to get a full size manuscript. You should ideally contain at least one subplot. So it's all together about how your story hangs together. So here's some ideas to help you through that, because it can be, a little intimidating or overwhelming at first, because you've just finished this great epic, and now you've got to go back and tear it apart, basically. So here's the next passes after developmental. As we talked with the line editing style, word choice, very sentence length and structure, paragraphs, copy editing is the grammar, proofing, typos. And we'll go over more of these things later on. But here's a tip. To avoid reading as much your manuscript over and over again, pack as much as you can in one pass. So say you're reading developmental, I recommend that you just do the developmental. You're looking for those story holes, character holes. But in these three passes, you can usually do more than one thing at a time. If you see a typo, you correct it. If you see something is not clear, you rewrite the sentence. But those are the formal names for each of the edit levels. So before the revise, one of the single most important things that I've found in editing, and one of the most productive thing, is let your manuscript go cold, I've found, for as long as you can. Stephen King recommends 30 days. So I'd say at least a month. If you can do it longer, do it longer. You want it to go completely cold, so when you come back to it, you can read it with fresh eyes and you can spot stuff. And, I have, as I mentioned, I was a journalist. So sometimes when I look back at my clippings from years ago, I don't really remember writing them or anything. I look at it and I read through and I'm like, wow, this is really good. Did I write that? And I'm impressed with myself. So it really works when you come back, when your manuscript is cold, when your story is cold, because you can really spot the things. And like I said, I can go back to these articles that I wrote and think, oh, I should have gotten a quote from this person, or I should have done, that. At the time, I didn't see that. So that's, I think, the single most important thing you can do is to edit yourself, is just put it aside. Work on something else in the meantime. You can write a short story, an essay, poem, even a screenplay. I just took a break from a manuscript I'm working on, a mystery, and I wrote a screenplay that I've always wanted to write based on one of my short stories. And I just wrote the first draft, and then I'm putting that aside to go cold and going back now to the revision of the mystery. You can write things also that are related to your work in progress. And this will serve also as a valuable marketing and promotional tool later. If you have an essay, if you're doing a theme in your novel, it's a big picture theme, I don't know, suicide, mental health, disabilities, or just, I don't know, romance or something, you can find an angle to write an essay about it, and pitch that to different media outlets, and then you put at the end as a novel, entitled such and such, coming out. So that can be a good thing to work on as a marketing tool, or a short story related to one of your characters in the novel is another way to explore something else from your novel. I've actually written stuff. This novel that I'm working on, I've actually written 3 short stories on various sort of aspects or various iterations of this story, and so it served as a good guideline. Obviously, big jump from short story to novel, so you have to expand a lot on character and plot and things, but it gives you that outline, that sort of guideline for your story. So that's another thing you can be thinking of, maybe for your next work on a short story about an idea that you have. You can also be working on your marketing and promotion plan. Like most authors, you probably are not too thrilled about the idea of doing that. I totally get it. I am the same way, but we have to do these things these days, even if you have a major publisher. So you jot down your ideas, start reaching out to book bloggers, Instagram bookstagrammers, making TikTok videos, what have you. Building your social media platform, always a good idea. Start following other people on Twitter, Insta, TikTok, what have you. Just start following them and they'll probably follow you. Work on your submission list if you're going to seek an agent or publisher. Just start going through Googling editors and literary agencies, making that list. Or you can just take a total break and go on holiday on a tropical island and drink drinks with little umbrellas in them and just stare out at the sea and contemplate your life or your novel, which again, there's totally a value in doing that. So when you get back to doing your editing, so you want to have a couple things. Number one, it's really important, I think, to print it out. Now, this may seem like a huge endeavor for your rinky-dink printer in your home office, but it really helps because your brain processes things differently when they're in a different format. So by printing it out, automatically it's taking it one step removed from seeing it on a computer screen. So your brain is less likely to skip over things that it would because it's so used to seeing your work on the computer screen. So I've found that printing it out is highly helpful. I did not used to do that. And then I always heard, print it out. So finally I did it. And I think it really does help. So I do recommend that. Get a different color pen. Obviously, red is the editing color, but whatever color turns you on, purple, green, but something that's going to stand out on your page. Highlighter is also a really great thing to have, and a notepad, because you're going to jot down things as you see them, and do a thing. Chapter 1, as you read chapter 1, write down the things. Chapter 2 needs such and such, such and such. That helps also when you go back to do the rewrite. And as I said, edit from big to small. So you're going to start off with that developmental edit. So the things to look for, which I call sort of your story scaffolding. Number one is repetitions. And these both are repeated words and repeated situations. And this happens to every writer because you have something, again, it can be a word or a situation in the front of your brain. So as you're writing everything down, you're just getting the words on paper. You tend to go back to the easiest thing, and it's always the same thing. I edited a novel a little while ago, and everything was lime green. The author had put in, every time he mentioned a color, it was lime green. And I thought, one of the notes, I think you can there are more colors than lime green. But again, this is a very easy thing to a little hole to fall into. It's the same with words. One of my favorite words is sort of, or actions is, a sob choking in her throat. And I notice I have a lot of sobs choking in throats. We want to vary those. You want to try to use everything just once, twice at the most. That's just good writing. And it's the same with situations. If your characters convey information or act in the same way over and over again, you want to vary that. So say you have Bobby coming home, and mom and dad are sitting at the kitchen table, and he says what he's done that day, and you have it done several times through your book. You want to vary that. So you want him coming home from school and he finds his mother in the garden, or he finds no one home, or he gets on the phone and tells about his day to someone else. You just want to vary the situations, the way that your characters are conveying the information that they have to convey. And again, this is something that everybody does. So you're looking for those types of things. You're also going to look for contrasts. And by this, I mean, you're going to look for ways that conflict is going to be heightened. So can you heighten the conflict in any way? Are things happening late at night, which automatically gives it a little more drama. If things are going to take a drastic enough turn, you want to really heighten that drama and heighten your conflict. Drama is essentially conflict. So look at ways, do you have your scenes where you have conflict, is there ways to heighten that conflict in any way, increase the stakes? If you have a scene, boyfriend, girlfriend fighting in the living room, can you perhaps heighten that conflict by having the parents pull into the driveway, or coming home right in the middle of it, or something like that? And increase your stakes. Always look for the ways to increase your character's stakes. And that really gets your readers involved in it, in things. Cause and effect is another thing that I noticed too. You want to have a chain of events. A happens, so B happens, C happens, because D happens, E happens, but or nevertheless F happens. So you don't want to have it's raining and Alice was having tea. You want it was raining, so Alice had tea in a cafe. Things like that. You want to make sure that everything is linked in your cause and events. Question: what if there's too much conflict? The pace is constantly too fast. Yes, this is another thing. You have to sort of vary your scenes. I'm just going to have a drink. That's another thing. Yeah. Is your pace happening too fast? You have to give your readers a break, a breather. So that's one thing when we're going to look at scenes, I think is coming up. You're going to have a scene full of conflict, a big scene. Then maybe take a breather on the next scene. Maybe just have the character reflecting on that conflict, instead of having things happening in too rapid succession. So that's another thing. Yeah, the pace is constantly too fast. You're going to look at that as well, is in your pacing. Because it can be kind of wearing if it's too intensely, the conflict is too intensely driven, which brings to this, the scene breakdown. So Another way to look at this is also, and this is actually very handy if you're writing a screenplay, because of course screenplays are all just, scene from scene to scene. You're going to break down your scenes. You're going to look at your scene openings. I just read a book, actually a fairly big best-selling book, but almost every chapter opened with the author describing the light. It was always something about the light or the sun coming in the room, and the light was this and that. You want to vary those openings. Make sure, and it's not always about the light or the weather or the time of day. Of course, sometimes it's going to be that, but again, vary that situation and the wording that you use. And vary your scene length. So again, this goes back to the previous question. Vary your short scenes and long scenes, your intense scenes with reflective scenes, or just sort of that still serve to drive the character and the plot forward, but give a little bit of break to the reader and let things rest and breathe a little bit. So you're also going to look at scene purpose. So is it driving character, plot, or ideally both? You want to have your scenes driving both character and plot, carrying a lot of weight, carrying their weight. So this is really handy for like weeding out scenes that are not really doing much other than, you just want to have something happen. So you're going to look at what your scene is accomplishing. How does it move the plot forward? How is it driving character? How is it your character? How is it showing, revealing more of your character? Or how is it putting the character in a new situation that they're going to respond to? Okay, back to that. And then one way you can do this, which is a sort of a formal way, is a scene table with columns. So you have your one column, and it can be chapter 1, scene 2, so on. Second column is going to be a brief one-sentence description of your scene. Alice and Bob, break down in their car on the motorway. And then it's going to say, how is this driving character? What's the purpose of the scene? The goal of the scene? Is it to drive the plot forward? Now they're not going to arrive at the party on time. And what's that going to then cause? Again, remembering your chain of events, your causality. What's that going to cause? That plot complication of breaking down on the way to the party. Is it going to drive character? Is Alice going to be able to keep it together? And we see another side of Alice. She's the cool character who keeps her head in as her partner loses it or something. So you're going to do a scene table with these columns, and that can really, and then when you look back at it, it really helps see, oh, okay, this is a good scene. It's accomplishing at least one or at least two things. Is this scene also can be describing setting, of course. Does the scene, expound and expand the setting of the plot? Is it snowing, for example, which expands the conflict because now they don't have the right type of vehicle or tires to drive in the snow, what have you. So that's one way you can look at scenes, and of course, whether you need a breather scene. So after you do all that, you can ideally set aside your manuscript for another couple weeks, set 30 days, go back to your intermediate project. Then you're going to come back and do a line edit. And this time you're going to print out in a different font. So this can be, you're using Arial or Times New Roman, print it out in Comic Sans or some other font, Helvetia or what have you. Because again, this forces your brain to look at your manuscript with a fresh eye. It's not going to just gloss over things that you're used to seeing. So again, print it out, just do a select all, change the manuscript, change the font. You can also change the font size. If you're doing 12 point, try 14. And again, to jog your brain into looking at the work in a fresh way. You can also do things like listen to the computer read it out. You can get these apps that the computer will actually read out. And, computers don't skip over everything. They read everything just as it is. So that's a good way of spotting mistakes, repeated words, missing words, things like that. You can also read it out loud yourself. And this is a great way to spot mistakes. I haven't actually done this because it really is, again, reading out a novel out loud is a lot of work, but it really helps you find the mistakes. And also it's great for getting that ear for dialogue. And again, especially if you're writing a screenplay. So read it out loud to yourself, maybe to someone else even. But that's a great way of testing dialogue, I would say. One of the things you can also do is do a one-sitting read. So you're going to just devote one day into sort of a fast pass read. And that's a great way also of going back to what you're of finding things, because again, when you read a book, you may put it down, you pick it back up, you put it down, you pick it back up. You're going to miss things, you just look at things a little differently because you don't remember everything. But if you read it all in one sitting, it's easier to follow the plot and find those little plot holes along the way because it's fresh in your mind. So those are just a couple of other ways of editing. And now you're going to look for sentence structure. So again, back with the repetitions, are all your sentences sort of the same thing? Do you start with the same word? And this is a problem if you're writing first person too. It's very hard because everything is I. So, do you have so many I's? Is there some way you can vary your sentence structure so you're not starting every sentence with I, which, as I said, is kind of difficult when you're writing first person, but it can be done. So starting with the same word, starting with clauses or gerunds, going to the shop, comma, I noticed it was raining or something. So do you have too many of those? Some people really hate starting with those sort of clauses at the beginning, going to the shop or something. I'm fine with it. It can be annoying when there's too many in a row. So you want to throw one in every now and then. But again, you can really hear when you read that, you can really hear it. Cliches, of course, the writer's bane. Words, phrases, metaphors. So, and again, sometimes we write these in automatically, getting that first draft out, that we reach for the easiest thing that's in our brain. And there's very often cliches, they're words, phrases, the metaphors. He was pale as a ghost, smoked like a chimney, and things like that. And look for those phrases that are just overused, and find different things, different ways to express that. Word choice. So you're going to look at, are you using the best words that you can to convey what you want, convey your meaning? So you're going to look for those strong active verbs. You're going to weed out as many adverbs as you can. I'm not opposed to adverbs, just use them sparingly. Do you really need it, or is there a verb that can take better place of the adverb? Looking for those passive voice verbs. Do you have too many was goings instead of went, or am going instead of I go? Look for that. Try and weed out those passive voice constructions, or it was said instead of something. Metaphors, you can work in some, if you have some good literary kind of metaphors, which I always love to give my manuscripts a bit of a literary flourish. So you can, get in, seed some metaphors here and there. Again, you want to use them sparingly, but put them in by all means. And yeah, are you using the best word for your meaning? Other stuff, vary the short and long sentences. Ensure you're in one tense. This is a big problem. I also find is just people tense hopping, which drives me nuts. If you're in past, stick to past. If you're in present, stick to present. It's amazing how many people get that wrong. But again, because we're writing, getting it out in the first draft, it often does. We mess it up in our heads. Head hopping and point of view issues. Are you in your character's point of view? Are you securely in their head, or are you moving into other people's thoughts, conveying other people's thoughts and reactions to things? Unless you're in the sort of the third person omniscient narrator mode. Another thing to look for, are your character names too similar? This can cause confusion in the reader. If you have a Jack and a Jerry, for example, what did I have recently? I had a Fiona and another F name. So I changed one of them because they just sounded a little too similar. Make sure you have dialogue tags. Or not, you can dispense with dialogue tags too if you have an action piecing together bits of dialogue. I went to the shop today. Jack scratched his chin. I didn't really know what to buy. So you can weed out that dialogue tag with an action, which is more interesting. Or if you've got a stream of sort of back and forth dialogue, can you dispense with a couple of dialogue tags, or do you need them? Sometimes I've had to go back and insert dialogue tags because if it's too long of a back and forth dialogue, the reader loses track of who's talking. So put your dialogue tags in, take them out, replace them with actions. Those are all things to look for in this pass. Then we get to sort of the final end, so the end pass, which can be sort of done together. And that's copy editing and proofing. Things that I've found, excuse me, chapter sequencing. If you're moving chapters around, like I'm writing a mystery, so I did a lot of moving chapters because I'm trying to place the clues and the misdirections. So, should this come before, they find out this? Constantly moving around chapters. So my chapter numbers were all off. I mean, it was completely off. And so I suddenly realized, I'm like, I have 2 chapter 23s, or, chapter 26s before chapter 16. So you want to go through and just do a chapter sequencing, the chapter number check. You've got all your chapters numbered. Same with pages. That's usually not as big of a problem because the Word will do that for you. Keep to your standard format throughout, and check manuscript format. So many people these days, they do a paragraph and then separate paragraphs with a double space in between. That is not manuscript style. Manuscript style, you indent your paragraph and you don't leave a space. So check that, because a lot of people do that. And again, I think Word is sometimes set up to automatically do that. That's fine for sort of a business letter, not for a book manuscript. So check your manuscript formatting. Should be in 12-point, Times New Roman, or maybe Arial or Colibri or other very common types. But it shouldn't be a fancy type. I know some people like to type in Courier, which makes it look very scripty and sort of old typewriter-y. No, just stick to Times New Roman. It's boring, but it's easy to read. That's the reason that exists. It's just a very readable format font. Check your publishing style book. In the US, we use the Chicago Manual of Style is sort of the publishing industry style guide. I don't know what it is in the UK. I'm sure there's something similar. But you can check things for, such as use of italics, what gets italicized and what not. Names of books, songs, TV shows, movies, that type of thing. You want to go through and try and make sure you've got as many of the correct italics as possible. Because it just makes you, even though obviously if you get a publishing contract, the publisher is going to copy edit and proof everything, but it shows to the agent or to whom you're submitting that you're a professional and you take this seriously, because this is the tools of the writer's trade, is style, grammar, punctuation, all these things, spelling. Another thing to check are brand names. And this is something I don't like to use a lot of brand names in my work. Some writers use them a lot, and they can convey a different thing. For example, if you have a Louis Vuitton purse, we get an automatic. We know who that character is because she uses a Louis Vuitton purse or a Louis Vuitton fake purse, so on and so forth. It can also date your stories and characters too, But if you're going to use brand names, make sure they're correct. And I do this just with a quick Google of the name. Coca-Cola is a extremely common one. Capital C on Coca, hyphen, capital C on cola, no spaces around the hyphen. 7-Eleven, the convenience shop, it's a numeral 7 and then no space and then 11 spelled out. So again, if you're going to use brand names, make sure they're correctly spelled with spaces, hyphens, all that type of thing. And obviously you're going to check for typos, spelling errors, all these types of things, whether you've got to make sure you've got all your I's dotted and T's crossed, to quote a cliche. But again, this is important just because it will make you look more professional, that you know what you're doing. Now, you may want to seek beta readers, or to see how your story goes over with readers. And it's a good idea. I've got really hung up on this. So you have to have people you trust. The one thing I have learned is not to give your first draft to a beta reader. Make sure you've sort of gone as far as you can go with your draft before giving it to a beta reader. And I've made this mistake a couple times, and because then you get back, what happens, you get back kind of a shitty review, and it can really damage your self-confidence. When my very first attempt at a novel years ago, and I wrote, I don't know, I didn't even have the whole thing done, 30, 50 pages. And I gave it to someone who I knew had written a novel. And he came back and said, well, I don't know if anybody's interested about gorillas in Guatemala, Christina. I mean, this is, he thought it was kind of a passé. First of all, that's not a valid critique. I wasn't asking him for, his opinion on my story. I was just, asking an opinion on how it was written. But he criticized the story, and that completely blocked me for several years. I put it away, and I never went back to fiction writing for a few years after that. So you have to make sure, that you have trusted people, that they know what they're doing when they're reading your work, and not give them an early draft. I also made this mistake with an agent once. I gave my agent an early first draft of a novel I was working on. And again, I got a very scathing sort of review back that completely crushed me. And I was basically sort of had to lie on the couch for a week until finally I forced myself to get up and move on. And then I realized much later that I shouldn't have given her that early draft. That wasn't, and I admit I'd made the mistake of thinking the agent was going to help me write it, help serve as sort of an editing role. But that is not what agents do generally. Sometimes some agents are more editorially hands-on than others. But the point is, know who you're giving your draft to. Don't give an early draft unless you really, really trust this person, because it really does come out as, you don't know what you're doing. when you do, you just need to, all writers need to rewrite. So, just take care with your beta readers. You can also do workshops and writers groups and everything. Sometimes you can get what they call revenge critiques. If you, have a sort of a negative critique of someone else's work, and then you hand them your work, they can come back at you and start tearing you to pieces. It happens. It's happened to me as well. And again, I had to take a step back and say, oh, wait a minute. I was upset about what this one woman said about my characters in the book. And then I sort of realized, well, I'd kind of done the same thing to her, because, so it was a revenge critique. So when you get so say you do have a trusted group of beta readers, you hand it to them, and then you start getting your feedback back. You have to evaluate everything you get back. And the way I do it is, sometimes you sort of know what's wrong with your manuscript. You have this sort of little eking feeling, or you don't know if you did something right. And this particular reader pinpointed that very issue that you had that little nagging feeling about. That usually means it's true. In other words, you knew something was wrong. Maybe you didn't, you took a shortcut and didn't go into didn't want to do the work. This has happened to me too. And yes, there's a hole there. So you have to go back and do that. The other thing to watch is, this is a subjective business completely. So what works for some people doesn't work for others. Yes, this is exactly what, there's a question here about beta readers. Yes, exactly. So people come up with different things. They don't like this, or they don't like that. So how you decide, you are the writer, it's your work. So you have to decide what works and what doesn't, or, if they're saying what they're saying is true or not. The only thing is, one, pay attention to that little nagging feeling. If it touches on something that you already kind of felt unsure about, or you weren't, you're like, I'll just do it this way. And maybe they've, stumbled upon something that you didn't do quite right. That means you probably have to change it. I would say you'd have to change it. The other thing is, if three beta readers say the same thing, you definitely have to change it. And I used to think it was 3, but now I've whittled that down to 2. If 2 people come up with the same observation, you have to change it. My novel, Skin of Tattoos, all my, early readers who got published, then I had a bunch of readers come back to me, and they all said that one character, he was an evangelical minister, a vicar in a storefront church in downtown Los Angeles, and he turns out to be a bad guy. And so there was a very abrupt, he's set up like the good guy. I've set him up as a good guy. He's helping my gang member. And then he turns out to betray him. And all of them said, yeah, that really took me aback. That was really quite a twist. And I thought, you know what? Probably was too much of a twist. I had to set that up some way. There had to be a clue or a foreshadowing. I was missing that foreshadowing, because all of 4 people mentioned that. So if people all mention that one particular thing, it probably means you do have to rewrite it. And it may be something you don't have that little nagging feeling about. Maybe something different. So you do have to pay attention to what beta readers say. But in the end, it is your work. You have to decide what to change or not. And it can drive you nuts when everybody comes up with different things. And again, you just have to go back. You can also, a good way is to let the critique go cold. Just read through it quickly. It kind of stings. I mean, let's face it, any negative feedback, it does sting. I mean, I don't care what stage of your journey you're on, it stings. You want it to be positive. You want people to like your work. So just read it quickly and then just put it aside and come back to it in a week, couple days, a week, longer, and read it then more objectively. It's gone cold. It's going to be negative. You're not expecting positive. So it's going to be a negative thing. and then just look at really what they're saying and go back and read the section or what have you, and then make a decision on evaluating, whether you're going to change it or not, especially if it entails a major rewrite. And then you're going to polish, your final way through. You're going to, read it once more, perhaps. The other thing too is don't overread. That's why I said before, I forgot to mention this, your manuscript. Because let's face it, you have a piece of wood and you're polishing it, and you keep reading it, you keep reading your manuscript, or you keep polishing that big piece of wood. Eventually the sheen is going to rub off, and the wood is going to kind of go dull and unattractive. And that happens with manuscripts. When you read them too many times, you just skip over things, and you lose your enthusiasm for it. You're just sick of it. And you don't want that to happen. You want to remain passionate and enthusiastic about your book and about your writing. So that's why I say pack as much as you can into one pass, but I do recommend the developmental and then sort of another pass at least once, just to go over your smaller, grammar and punctuation type things, and maybe one read at the end just to polish up, make sure you've got good relevant metaphors, no typos, that kind of thing. But you do have to take care not to overread the manuscript. Now, do I have one more slide? And that's it. Yes, that's basically it. There's my email, website. You can sign up for my newsletter, or just take a look at who I am, that kind of thing. And feel free to get in touch. You can send me contact on the contact form on my website, or there in my email, choag24@gmail. Any other questions or observations or comments that, does any of this ring true to you, that things have happened to you on different ways of editing or different techniques? I'm always trying to hear what different other people do as far as getting a good editing thing. How do you fix Purple Prose? You just delete it. That's how I fix it. You have to really notch it down, and you have to kind of know what it is. Sometimes as beginning writers, we want to be literary, and we think things are really, so we really reach for those metaphors or just dramatic writing. I read a book just the other day. It was a true crime book, but he had something like raindrops slid down the windscreen like tears on a baby's cheek. I thought, oh God, it's again, that was Purple Prose. It was just too much. So that's why, when you're looking for metaphors and literary flourishes, make sure they are relevant to your to the contrast, to the subject matter, and avoid overreaching. Likening raindrops to tears on a baby's cheek when you're talking about a serial killer inside the car, looking at his next victim, didn't really fit. So you do have to watch for that. And I would say just delete it. Just delete the fancy words and just put in a clear sentence. Remember, we're writing for clarity above all. We want readers to be able to read and read our work, read the book. So just go for clarity in the end. So it looks like there are no more questions or comments or anything else. So that's about it. I hope you took something useful away from this. But as I say, you can feel free to contact me or through social media. I'm on all the usual platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and whatnot. So thanks for attending and watching.